Hi. Um, so this week we're going to be talking about, um, I guess, liberty, government, that sort of thing. This is part of, obviously part of creating a community. What sort of government do we want to have? And when you think about government, America has sort of almost like a totally revolutionary notion of what government should be. Although actually, as we read Stephen Breyer's writing, then we'll see that in the past, especially in indigenous populations, the community was involved. The community did make the decisions collectively. So America's notion is revolutionary for at least the West, for at least 1,000, maybe 2,000 years, because we focus so much on monarchies and governments who make our decisions for us in the past. So America's Constitution represented a major break with the past, with that past. All right, so in this same module, I've posted about 10 pages from Justice Stephen Breyer's book, Active Liberty, and I'm going to read some of that. I hope you all remember that Justice Stephen Breyer he was a Supreme Court justice for many years. He retired fairly recently in order to allow maybe a younger person to join the Supreme Court, and we had our first African-American woman on the Supreme Court as a result of that. Okay, so let's go to read his book, and you're welcome to either just listen to me, or go ahead and read it together with me. It's posted so you can open it anytime. All right, so the United States is a nation built upon principles of liberty. That liberty means not only freedom from government coercion, but also the freedom to participate in the government itself. And that is the main point, right? Yes, of course, we understand the need for freedom from the government. We don't want to have government interference in our lives, or we don't want the government to be telling us what to do. But in America, we actually also have the freedom to participate in the government. We are the government in one sense, okay? When Jefferson wrote, "I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of the society but the people themselves," his concern was for abuse of government power. But when he spoke of the rights of the citizens as a participator in the government of affairs, when Adams, his rival, added that all citizens have a positive passion for the public good, and when the founders referred to public liberty, they had in mind more than freedom from a despotic government. They had invoked an idea of freedom as old as antiquity, the freedom of the individual citizen to participate in the government and thereby to share with others the right to make or to control the nation's public acts. Is this as old as antiquity? Yeah, right? It's monarchies that are actually relatively recent. If we go back thousands of years, power was much more equally distributed amongst the population, and radically, it actually was distributed amongst the women too. So, in a sense, we're going back to something, right? And I'm sure now that all of us would agree that it's really important in defining a society for everybody's voice to be heard. Okay, we may sort of make some qualifications that we think people should be at least somewhat educated. And we may also decide that people shouldn't just impose their own desires on others, but everybody really has a right to be heard. Okay, so writing 30 years after the adoption of the American Constitution and the beginnings of the French Revolution, the political philosopher Benjamin Constant emphasized the differences between these two kinds of liberty. He called them the liberty of the ancients and the liberty of the moderns. He described the liberty of the ancients as an active liberty. It consisted of a sharing of a nation's sovereign authority among that nation's citizens. From the citizen's perspective, it meant an active and constant participation in collective power. Are we actively and constantly participating in collective power in our lives? Do we feel like that? Do we feel like we agree with a lot of the way that things are going? Do we have accepted the economic inequality? Do we feel like we can do anything about things that we don't agree with? Right? So these are all really good questions. And, you know, the answers that we come up with to those sort of questions will determine how we can move forward from here. Because I think most people right now feel that we're in a defining time, that we can't continue as we have been, but things need to change. So it's really just a matter of, do we sit back and you know, let the government, whatever it is, let them decide? Or is this a time when we speak up for active liberty, our own participation, for a collective determination of the future? All right, so what does it mean? How can we participate in collective power? So according to Benjamin Constant, it included the citizen's right to deliberate in the public place, to vote for peace or war, to make treaties, to enact laws, to examine the actions and accounts of those who administer government, and to hold them responsible for their misdeeds. From the nation's perspective, it meant submitting to all the citizens, without exception, the care and assessment of their most sacred interests. This sharing of sovereign authority, Constant said, enlarged the citizens' minds, ennobled their thoughts, and established among them a kind of intellectual equality, which forms the glory and the power of a people. And I think that's true, right? If we felt that we were creating America on a constant basis, I think we would obviously feel differently about it, because we would be faced with what we had created. We are faced with what we have created, but what we're faced with doesn't feel like we participated. The way that we unfortunately participated was mostly by not being able to have any say in things. So how have we degenerated to the point where many people feel relatively powerless, that they don't have a voice? How have we come to that point? So we need to understand that, because we want to be able to move forward. How about our right to deliberate in the public place? Do we have any public places to deliberate in? We can go and deliberate as much as we want in a coffee shop. It's not going to make much difference, but actually it will make a difference, because whether anybody hears it or not, the point is that we are able to learn from each other if we talk about public things, if we talk about policies. And actually, you'll find that many of your local government, like your local senators or state reps, they usually do hold constituent hours in coffee shops on a regular basis. At least in Delaware, our state rep and our local senator both can be found in a local coffee shop once a month, and they invite people to go talk to them. I don't know how it is in Pennsylvania, but I would imagine it can't be that much different. Look it up, actually. So that's good in that you can actually talk to people. You have access to the people who are making decisions. But that also tells us, one of the problems, we are so big, there's so many citizens that it just feels almost impossible to have your voice heard. We have actually sort of, we've tended to figure that our representative will take care of things for us. And as we know, that is degenerated right now to the point where there's almost no communication between two opposing sides. That is sort of an American thing. It's not necessarily the case in other countries. Like in many countries, you have more than two parties. Israel has, I don't know, 15 parties maybe. And so inevitably, a government has to form a coalition. However, interestingly enough, right now, Israel has exactly the same problem as we do. There are two parties, essentially the very right-wing and the actually slightly less right-wing, because they're not really left-wing at all. There's a very small left-wing party there. But they really can't communicate. If you look at the news, hopefully it's going to be even on CNN, but if you look at the news, you will probably be able to see that there are massive demonstrations going on in Israel right now. So even just having enough small parties isn't really going to solve our problems, because the reason why we have two parties is because people have felt that joining together and at least agreeing on some sort of policy or something, at least having an agreement, is the most powerful way to get things done. And unfortunately, that's happened on both sides in America. So both parties now are pretty much uniform and will vote sort of, with the party rather than with their own thoughts. It wasn't like that, say, 40 years ago. You had quite a lot of conservative Democrats. You have quite a lot, well, the Republicans used to be somewhat more liberal than the Democrats, say, even 40 years ago, or some did. So it's sort of separated along party lines, and that has been a very negative force in our society. We haven't resolved that yet, but we have to, probably very, very soon. All right, so are we able to vote for war or peace? Again, our representatives, actually, I'm not even sure they do, because it does seem like there's ways for the president to pretty much do whatever he wants, whoever that may be. There's been much more sort of executive action than there used to be, mostly as a result of the fact that Congress is sort of stuck in this mutual opposition phase where nothing can get done. So we have to really be careful that we don't give away too much power to a president, because you may feel good about it while it's your president in that place, but if it's the other guy, the other party, you're not going to feel good about him having too much unilateral power. So anyway, do we make treaties? Are we involved in enacting laws? Are we able to even hold government responsible for misdeeds? We used to be able to more because we had an independent and free press, and we do somewhat, but I think we'll find that most of the press, a lot of the press, is on one side or another. It's become very politicized. It's very hard to read anything that isn't coming from a political perspective now. But from the nation's side, right, from the government side, they have to listen to the citizens. There is some sort of effort made to listen to citizens, but I wouldn't say there's a lot. And even listening doesn't necessarily result in doing anything about it. So in Delaware, if the state legislature wants to pass a bill, they will hold hearings first. So any person is welcome to go down there and speak for, I think it's about 3 minutes. I don't know if you could speak longer if you wanted, on anything, on any bill that comes before the legislature. But not a lot of people do. There's usually like activists on both sides who will turn up. So it's going to be essentially, I don't know, the same, say, 10 to maybe as much as 50 people. Not on any single bill. There's almost no bill that's going to get as many as even 10 people going to speak. But there are some, because some of them are very controversial. But it doesn't include the whole citizenry. And partly that's because most citizens don't even know that they could go and make a comment. Most citizens don't know what bills are coming up. They haven't really thought through their position. So you can't really blame the government for that. The government tries, at least to some small degree, to include the citizens. But we can blame ourselves as citizens to some degree. I think one problem is that we are not educated, that we're not educating our high school students in, real issues. We're not educating them in how they can participate, in how things work. Used to be like that more. We used to educate more towards civics, but we don't right now. So is that our fault that we come out of high school not knowing anything? No. But it is our fault as we get older if we allow that to continue. If we're not actively working to try to educate people in civics or, in the issues facing the country, then yeah, that's our fault. We're allowing things to degenerate even further. So I think it's very important. Education is very important. But also, I think, another issue is that we're very much concerned with just survival. Survival seems to take a lot of our effort, a lot of time. We are expected now to work pretty much all the time, to serve a corporation, to be available, and it's only getting worse actually since they could catch us at home through our cell phones, or since they could find us through some sort of electronic means. So anyway, yes, there's a lot of issues involved in this. Okay, let me stop here and I'll continue a bit more in the next video.